What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and I have a draft strategy video for you all today. So I'm going to be breaking down the double hero RB draft strategy, talking about, what this strategy is all about, talking about which running backs I'm going to be looking to target to be my two anchor running backs, and then I'm also going to be running through 5 different mock drafts from different points, different picks throughout the first round, and just showing you guys what type of double hero RB teams you can put together in your fantasy drafts. I always want to make the point that you should never go into a fantasy draft with one specific strategy. It's important to know how to execute all the different ones, but you should never head into your first pick saying, this is exactly what I'm going to do. It's good to understand how to execute them, but you want to let the draft come to you and then kind of figure out what draft you're going to go with here. But starting off with, what I would say are some of the kind of core components of the double hero RB draft strategy. As you can kind of tell from the name, you're going to be drafting 2 stud running backs. So typically there's going to be 2 top running backs within the first 3 rounds. Maybe you could push it to round 4, but this specific year, I don't think there's going to be a running back falling into the 4th round that I would want to be one of my anchor running backs. And then when you're drafting those early round running backs, at least personally, I want to be drafting guys that have league winning upside, running backs with truly elite ceilings, guys that can give you 20, maybe even 22 plus PPR points per game. Because if you're drafting 2 early round running backs and neither one of those dudes has a ton of upside, you're just taking on a pretty fragile overall roster, because running backs, they come with more risk than wide receivers. There's an increased risk that they go down with injury. They're missing time. And so if you're taking on 2 of those early round running backs, you want guys that can actually have a big return, that come with a lot of upside. So that's why I'm shooting for some of those high ceiling options, because you want these running backs to truly anchor your team and carry you to that fantasy football championship. Now, after the first 2-3 rounds, after you have snagged your 2 stud running backs, you're going to want to shift away from the running back position, and you can now pivot to hammering the wide receivers in the mid rounds. You can also look at quarterback, tight end. The idea here is that you are trying to avoid the running back dead zone. Now, like I said, you should never go into a draft locked in on one thing. I'm not saying you can never take a running back within the dead zone, but generally you want to be avoiding these running backs that are getting picked from rounds 4 through 7. This is a graphic that I've shown, in a few different draft strategy videos, but this is data going back all the way to 2017. You can see here running backs with a win rate above 8.33%. You have a 1 in 12 shot of winning your league. So these are running backs that, gave you a more than league average percent chance of winning. And you can see the first 3 rounds, right? The win rate is fine, but it really plummets in rounds 4, 5, 6, 7. You can see all 4 of those rounds under a 40% win rate, or a 40% hit rate for those running backs to deliver above league average. And it's especially bad in rounds 4 and round 5. And conversely, looking at the wide receiver chart, you can see that rounds 4 and round 5 is a great spot to be targeting the wide receiver position. So once you get those stud running backs, you want to pivot away, attack those other positions. And now your wide receiver spot definitely isn't going to be as strong as if you're executing a 0 RB or a hero RB draft strategy, because you're probably not getting at least 2 of those elite options within the first 3 rounds. But I'd still be aiming for at least wide receivers through your flex, and then hopefully you have 1 solid bench wide receiver that you'd be fine, plugging into your lineup. But I'm still someone who wants to go wide receivers through the flex, even if I am executing a double hero RB draft strategy. And then you should be looking for your running back 3 pretty much anytime after round 7. Like I said earlier on, you shouldn't just be blindly following those guidelines, right? It's not completely cut and dry. It's just, some general information to put out there. If you get some crazy value, obviously you don't have to completely punt the running back position, but just some general things I would kind of look to try to follow here. Now let's actually look at some of the running backs that I'd be targeting, in these double hero RB builds. So you can see here the running back, their current rank, what running back position they're being drafted in, what pick they're going at, and then whether I would buy or sell them at their current price, or if I'm just kind of neutral about their ADP, I'm fine with it. So this ADP is from 4for4, just consensus ADP from a ton of different fantasy platforms. And you can see here the first 3 running backs off the board: Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson. I think these guys are all very solid picks at their current price. CMC at the 101, Breece Hall at the 104, Bijan Robinson at the 106. I think those are very solid starts to your draft. Get that stud running back in round 1. I'm totally fine paying those prices for those 3 running backs. Then we have Jonathan Taylor here going at the 110. And in my opinion, JT at the 110 is a little bit rich for me. The earliest I'd be taking Jonathan Taylor is early round 2, so I would not want to spend that 1-2 pick on him, so I'm selling that price tag. If he is falling into the second, then I'm definitely willing to draft him, but he will not be someone that I'm drafting in the first round. Then we have Jahmyr Gibbs right behind JT at the 111. I believe Jahmyr Gibbs should be going ahead of Jonathan Taylor. I have Jahmyr Gibbs as my 109, so I'm definitely buying him at the 111 price tag. This is something I talked about in my video, I think it was yesterday, where I talked about like tough early round draft decisions, and I'm having a really tough time differentiating the running backs outside of the top 4. You have guys like Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Kyren Williams, Travis Etienne, Pacheco, Achane, and like you can see here, guys like Saquon, Derrick Henry kind of pushed up into the early to like mid-second round area, whereas Kyren Williams mid-second, Travis Etienne later second, Achane in the third round. I just don't know if these prices are maybe as sharp as what I think they could be. Like, do I really want to pay 202 Saquon when I could get Achane a full round later? Like, personally, I don't. Same thing with Derrick Henry. Like, should Derrick Henry even be going ahead of guys like Kyren Williams, Travis Etienne? I mean, should he even be going ahead of a guy like Isaiah Pacheco, who seems like he might have workhorse upside? So as of right now, I'm not huge fans of Saquon, Derrick Henry, in like the early second round area. I understand this landing spot's great for Derrick Henry, but he's never been a super high ceiling guy. He doesn't have that receiving upside to give you like 22 plus points per game over an entire season. He's getting up there in age. I just really wouldn't feel great drafting him over some of the running backs going behind him, especially, like just straight up I would take some of those other running backs, and he's actually going at a, more expensive price tag. Kyren Williams at the 206, I think that is a very fair price to pay for Kyren. So if you're getting a mid-second round to be your running back 1, running back 2, I think that's fair. I like Travis Etienne here as like the 209. I have him as like a neutral rank here, so also fine paying that. Would prefer like late second, but completely fine with the 209. Devon Achane at the 302 might be the most screaming value here. I have Devon Achane ranked ahead of Saquon Barkley. I'm strongly considering moving him ahead of Jonathan Taylor. I feel like people are acting like just because he's not going to be this full-on workhorse that he doesn't have the upside. In today's NFL, if you can get by with touchdowns, efficiency, and receiving upside, you can beat out guys like Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, who have question marks with their touchdowns and their receiving usage. So getting Achane in the third round when on certain platforms running backs are going to be really pushed up, I really like that price. Isaiah Pacheco, I continue to move him farther and farther up my rankings. I'm still just not quite there with him in the second round. I'd consider him early third, late second, a little too rich for me. And then the final running back here that I guess you could consider in like a double hero RB start is Josh Jacobs, going at the 312. I'm selling this. I think this is going to be a Packers committee. He's probably going to lead the committee, but he was not efficient last year. I just don't know if the upside's there, and I also don't think he's a super safe option, just given how poorly he played last year. So those are some of the targets I'm looking at. My favorite guys, CMC, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Achane, also totally fine taking guys like Kyren Williams, Travis Etienne. But let's actually dive into some of the mock drafts here. And the first one here is going to be from the 101, which obviously means we are snagging Christian McCaffrey to be our first stud running back. So we get Christian McCaffrey as our running back 1, and then 2-3 turn area here. You can see guys like Kyren, Achane, Travis Etienne. They went earlier in the second round, and even though I would prefer guys like Achane, maybe a Travis Etienne over a Derrick Henry, if I'm getting Derrick Henry late second, it's much later than where he's going to go on most drafts, so I'm fine pairing him with Christian McCaffrey. Maybe he doesn't have that nuclear ceiling, but we're definitely getting that with CMC. So that's my double hero RB start here with those two. And then you can see from rounds 3 through 6, we just hammered the wide receiver position. We didn't get a value at tight end that I liked. We didn't get one of these like top quarterbacks that I was super in on. So we go Nico Collins, T. Higgins, Zay Flowers, Hollywood Brown. I think you can kind of just pick your poison here with these Chiefs wide receivers. They're all kind of in the same range for me. But those are 4 pretty solid wide receivers. A nice wide receiver room considering we didn't take one within the first 2 rounds. Then we got to round 7, and this is where I went with Kyler Murray. Kyler's someone that I think I took in at least another one of these mock drafts. Round 7, round 8, Kyler, that's a price that I'm just very willing to pay for him. I actually have him ranked ahead of CJ Stroud. So you can see CJ Stroud went at the 411. I'm getting Kyler at the 701. Love that price tag. Then in round 8, I got back to the running back position. Like I talked about, rounds 4 through 7, probably want to avoid the running back position, but getting Jaylen Warren at the 812, in my opinion, is a fantastic discount. I mean, we're almost getting into like the triple digit picks, like the 100s. Jaylen Warren still on the board in the 90s. I think that is a very solid pick. Then I actually went back to wide receiver. Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, both from the Bills offense, but I think one of these guys is going to be fantasy relevant. So even though we went double hero RB, I feel like our wide receiver room is still very strong. Like arguably 6 guys who could potentially slot into the flex, maybe 5 if you're assuming like one of Coleman or Curtis Samuel pan out. But you can see in this draft, we didn't get an early round tight end, which means we're probably going to have to snag 2 later round options. I went round 11, Pat Freiermuth, round 13, Taysom Hill. Really like Freiermuth after like the top 11, 12 tight ends are off the board. Could definitely be the Steelers' number 2 target, I guess if they don't get Brandon Ayuk. And then Taysom Hill, someone who I think is just going to be used creatively, someone who's probably going to end up being like a fringe tight end 1 in points per game. And then we just wrapped up with some running backs here. Rico Dowdle in round 12 is someone who I think has upside to just straight up lead this Cowboys backfield. And then Ray Davis could get some goal line work, handcuff upside, playing behind James Cook. So that's a look at this roster here. That double hero RB start with CMC, Derrick Henry, like our quarterback with Kyler. I think our wide receiver room is solid with Collins, Higgins, Flowers, Hollywood Brown, Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel. Tight end position, not super strong, but I'm fine with the late round options we got. And then I think our bench is solid at the running back position with Jaylen Warren, Rico Dowdle, and Ray Davis. So that was from the 101. The next spot here is going to be from the 104. And I'm not sure if this is a spot where you're going to be able to execute double hero RB consistently, because this is a spot where I went with Tyreek Hill as the 104. Typically, I'd be going Breece Hall here, but Jamar Chase kind of surprisingly went at the 102. So if I'm getting Tyreek Hill 104, I'm going to take that all day long. Then in round 2, I went with a 209 Achane, maybe ahead of where most people would take him, but it's a decent amount behind where I'd take him if I was kind of forced to. And then the reason why I said that this may not be something you can do from this spot consistently, especially if you don't go running back in round 1, I don't know how often Travis Etienne is going to be falling to the 304, but I don't think it's crazy to have guys like Etienne, Achane, maybe on certain platforms, Derrick Henry, maybe Isaiah Pacheco if you really like him. I don't think it's crazy to think that you could get one of those dudes to fall to the 3rd round. So those are our 2 anchor RBs, Devon Achane, Travis Etienne. And this was a draft where we went pretty heavy tight end and quarterback. So we go round 4, Mark Andrews. Andrews at the 409 is just always going to be a really nice price for me. And then Anthony Richardson at the 504. Getting that elite quarterback there in the 5th round. So not a super wide receiver heavy team so far. So we get to business. We handle wide receiver from round 6 through 9. We go Rashee Rice, Deontay Johnson, Hollywood Brown. Maybe you don't love the 2 Chiefs wide receivers. I think it's tough to see one of those dudes not really panning out. Then Keon Coleman again. And then round 10, we go back to the running back position. We get Tajay Spears, who I think could totally be suitable slotting in as like a running back 2 due to an injury or due to a bye week. I think Tajay Spears should be in a pretty solid committee there with Tony Pollard. Our other running backs were Marshawn Lloyd, Elijah Mitchell. I think Lloyd has some sort of handcuff upside, and then Elijah Mitchell pretty much just a pure handcuff. And then our other wide receivers, Khalil Shakir and Jalen Polk. If I'm drafting early tight end, early quarterback, these elite options, Mark Andrews, Anthony Richardson, I really have no interest in snagging a second option. You can see we kind of hammered the wide receivers in the middle rounds. Not going to say this is the strongest wide receiver room, but I think it's fine given the elite options we have at running back, quarterback, and tight end. So that was from the 104. Then we have the 107 here. And at the 107, I started off this draft with Breece Hall. Now, on certain platforms, this may be realistic. On others, maybe not. I have Breece Hall up at my 104. So getting him at the 107, I think, is a tremendous value. And then I go round 2, Devon Achane. Like I said last time, probably ahead of where most people would take him, but behind where I'd be willing to draft him. Of all the potential realistic double hero RB starts, this one is probably one of my favorites, Breece and Achane. I'd say probably my favorite would be like Christian McCaffrey 101 and then Achane 2-3 turn, which on certain platforms is definitely reasonable. But I think this is a very strong start. I think both these running backs have that league winning upside. So getting them as my 1-2 punch at running back, I really, really like. This was a spot where we didn't go super heavy quarterback tight end. Rounds 3 through 6, we hammered wide receivers. So we went Jalen Waddle round 3, Tank Dell round 4, George Pickens round 5, Christian Kirk round 6, and then this is going to be another Kyler Murray team here at the 707. Like I said, 7th round Kyler, very interested in that. I'm taking him over Burrow. I'm taking him over Dak. I think he should be going potentially a round ahead of those dudes. Upgraded weapons with Marvin Harrison Jr. coming in, has that rushing upside. Then we get a round 8 Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson going in like the pick 90 area, I think is a great value. Should be the clear-cut wide receiver 1 for an improved Panthers offense. Then rounds 9 and round 10, we go back to running back. And this is probably one of the stronger running back rooms I think we're going to have in these mocks. Getting Brian Robinson in round 9, I think, is a great pick. Then getting Chase Brown in round 10. That Bengals backfield seems very, very murky. I think I was a little bit more confident a few weeks ago that like Zach Moss would have the edge to be the lead back. Seems like it's a very close competition. Either one of those dudes could break out. So being able to draft the potential Bengals running back 1 in round 10 is a price I just can't pass up. This was another spot where I actually went with the same late round tight end combo, Pat Freiermuth, Taysom Hill. If I'm putting the position, that's definitely a duo I kind of like creating here. And then this was another Rico Dowdle team. Honestly, a very strong running back room, even though we only went with 2 running backs through the first 8 rounds. And then we snagged Demario Douglas in round 14. At this point, it just kind of seems like a toss-up with how that Panthers wide receiver room is going to shake out. Is it, Baker stepping up? Is it a guy like Jalen Polk stepping up? Do they get a guy like Brandon Ayuk, who would pretty much make all those other dudes irrelevant? I don't know, but 14th round Douglas, I don't think is crazy. I actually really like this team. Maybe not the strongest at the wide receiver position, but I still think we have 5 guys that I'd be comfortable playing through my flex. Tight end would definitely be the weak point here, but I think the running back position is so strong. I like the quarterbacks. Definitely like this, the way this one came together. And then shifting into the next draft from the 109. This was a Bijan Robinson start, and one of the rare examples where we didn't go running back in round 1 and round 2. Typically, that's how you're going to see a double hero RB start. But for this one, we went Bijan Robinson at the 109. Love the value there. And then round 2, like I said, we did not go running back. We could have gone with a guy like Kyren Williams or Devon Achane again, in the second round, and that would have been a suitable double hero RB start. But I wanted to just kind of see if we can get one where maybe we got a faller in the 3rd round. So I went Drake London at the 204. Then you can see we had Isaiah Pacheco fall into the 309. And a few weeks ago, I probably wouldn't have pulled the trigger here with Pacheco. I might have gone with a wide receiver. Probably would have been a wide receiver in this spot. But I think with some of the recent news we're getting, it really seems like the Chiefs want Isaiah Pacheco to be the workhorse. I think this Chiefs offense is going to be much better than they were last year. And I think getting Pacheco at the 309 is going to look like a smash of a value at the end of the season. So maybe he doesn't have that nuclear upside. But getting late 3rd round Pacheco to be my running back 2, Bijan has that elite upside. I think it's a pretty solid start here through 3 rounds. Then round 4, round 5, we go wide receiver with Cooper Kupp, Tank Dell. We get a 604 Anthony Richardson, which is a price tag I'm going to be interested in every single time. Then we get round 7, Evan Ingram, 709 Ingram. I'm typically not trying to reach for that tier of tight end. You're not going to see me draft a ton of George Kittle. Maybe I'll get an Njoku, a Ferguson if they fall. But I do think Ingram going in the later 7th is just a solid pick. He was such a volume machine last year for the Jaguars. Not saying he's going to replicate that, but I think if this offense improves, he's still going to have a very solid role. Could see a increase in the touchdown production. Then we went round 8, Deontay Johnson, and I will say of all the teams, this is going to be one of the weaker ones at wide receiver, at least in terms of our depth. I feel very solid about our top 4 with Drake London, Cooper Kupp, Tank Dell, Deontay Johnson. But then I get round 10, Cortland Sutton, and maybe I don't feel great about throwing him into the flex, but I think we could do worse given how much we attack the other positions. This was another Tajay Spears team as the running back 3. 909 Spears, just really like that value. The other running backs we snagged, Jalen Wright, Tyler Algier. Wright's kind of like a unique handcuff where he's like a handcuff for 2 different guys. Tyler Algier probably just a pure handcuff. But given the fact that we had 2 stud running backs early on and then another running back that I think is playable, I'm fine taking guys in maybe less ambiguous situations, but I still think there's some hope for Jalen Wright to just straight up earn a role. And then some of the other wide receivers we snagged, Joshua Palmer, Dontavian Wicks. I don't draft a ton of Palmer. I'm fine taking him, I guess, in the 12th in this specific draft. And then Dontavian Wicks, his snap counts didn't look great coming from some of the Packers reports, but he was very efficient last year. This is probably going to be some sort of a wide receiver by committee, so someone who could potentially step up. 14th round, younger, talented player. I'm fine taking him there. So overall, I think this team is looking pretty solid, strong at the quarterback position, totally fine with Evan Ingram at tight end, running back with Bijan, Pacheco, Spears, some handcuffs, and then wide receivers, Drake London, Cooper Kupp, Tank Dell, Deontay Johnson. Not great after that, but overall, a fairly balanced roster. And then the final mock draft here from the 112. This is probably going to be one of the more common double hero RB starts. It's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor. So 112 Jahmyr Gibbs, 201 Jonathan Taylor. I think this is something that is somewhat attainable in most drafts if you have a later first round pick. So starting off there, like I said, I don't necessarily love the idea of taking Jonathan Taylor at the 201, but I'm also just very willing to admit that the second round is just completely gross. Like, it feels so flat. And so if you like JT at the 201, like, I'm not going to push back super heavy there. Round 3, round 4, we're pivoting away from running back. We go Jalen Waddle, Malik Neighbors. This was another Anthony Richardson team here at the 512. More wide receivers with Amari Cooper, Ladd McConkey. At the 601, the 712. Then we get a round 8 David Njoku, which I'm totally fine drafting Njoku there. Maybe some people think it's a little reach. I don't think it's crazy. Locking up that tight end position. I didn't want to get a third draft where we kind of just punted the position. Then we get a round 9 Brian Robinson. Once again, just love the value on that pick. We had Cortland Sutton to be our wide receiver 5. Marshawn Lloyd, someone I talked about earlier on, to be our running back 4. We got Leggett and Dontavian Wicks as like those young wide receiver dart throws. And then Tyler Algier to wrap up this team. Definitely think this is a solid unit. Very strong at quarterback. Top 2 stud running backs, Jahmyr Gibbs, JT. Think Jahmyr Gibbs has a little bit more upside, but obviously both solid, running back ones. Jalen Waddle, Malik Neighbors, Cooper McConkey. I think it's a pretty solid wide receiver core. And then some dart throws there with just some young players, Lloyd, Leggett, Dontavian Wicks. But as you guys can see, those are the results from the 5 different mock drafts. Like I said, you can really execute this strategy from any pick within the first round. If things fall right, you can do early first round, get that CMC start, maybe a Breece Hall start, get guys like Achane, Travis Etienne, players like that going at the back end of the second. You can start it off like that. In the mid rounds, you're going to have options, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, maybe you're getting a mid-round Kyron, a Saquon Barkley, players like that. And then late first round, you have the options, the JTs, the Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe you like Saquon in that early second area. Same things with Kyron Williams. There are definitely different spots where you can execute this. I think it's definitely a solid draft strategy this year if the value falls to you, especially on certain platforms like Yahoo specifically, ESPN in some sense. Like some of these draft platforms, the running backs are just so pushed up, but they're extra pushed up from like rounds 3 through like 6, 7, especially Yahoo. Like if you don't snag those running backs early on, you're just not going to get a good value for a very, very long time. ESPN's not as bad. Like I think the dead zone ends after like round 5, round 6 area. But if you can snag those 2 stud running backs early on, it's really going to allow you to rack up a ton of value at the wide receiver position. Maybe you get a value at quarterback, tight end, or both of those positions. So definitely a viable draft strategy. Like I said at the top, you should never go in locked into this strategy, but if through the first couple of rounds, you've got your 2 stud running backs, those were your best players available, definitely something that hopefully you guys now feel confident executing and kind of land in the plane when it comes to that draft strategy. Over the next few days, I'm also going to have videos talking about Hero RB, Zero RB, so stay tuned for those. If you guys enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.